Welcome back to a walk through the tarot. This is card 16, the Tower, also known as the Tower struck by lightning. The Fool is on a journey through his subconscious layers. In the last video, he met the Devil and came face to face with his shadow self. The Devil exposed the roots of his desires and showed him better ways to understand temptation so it can be overcome. It was an essential lesson, but won't be easy to maintain, and, as if that wasn't enough, this card is now showing him a scene of absolute destruction. Our Fool can smell burning and hear the screams as people fall. The sky is black with storm, while the tower stands high on a tall rock, but our Fool has learned to wait for deeper meanings to emerge. We're going to look at the background to this card, explore its symbols, and see what messages it has for our Fool as he continues with his journey. In Renaissance Italy, tall towers belonging to ruling families were often strategic as they enabled sight of surrounding landscapes. However, early tarot images commissioned by the Visconti and Sforza families didn't include a tower card. Maybe the image was too close to home. Heights were associated with status, but also the risk of being struck by lightning, as well as susceptibility to earth tremors and quakes. Because they represented rulership and power, their collapse could signify the fall of the families who owned them. Towers can be found in the Budapest and Rosenwald tarots, as well as the Charles VI deck. While in the Solar Busca, the oldest complete deck to survive, a man stands on the ground with a streak of lightning piercing his chest. The image appears in the Metelli Tarot, while the Soprafino Tower appears to be military and may be part of the town's defences. It's thought the origin of this card is biblical. God's displeasure often took the form of fire descending from the sky. The book of Genesis tells how King Nimrod was thrown from a tower by a streak of lightning sent from God. Nimrod built the city of Babel, so the card has been associated with the fall of its tower. In the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, God destroyed the towns with sulphur and fire, turning Lot's wife into a pillar of salt because she looked back at her home. The Caitlin Jeffrey Tower from the mid-1550s follows a similar theme, but this is the musician Orpheus and his wife Eurydice. Orpheus disobeyed the god's commands not to turn round as he led Eurydice out of the underworld, so she was lost to him. And the Tower card is a useful example of how different tarot designers used a wide range of sources for their images. As tarot moved from Italy to France in the 17th century, some decks replaced the tower with a tree and renamed it as Le Foudre, or the Lightning, while the Parisian tarot shows those guilty of sin are being taken into the mouth of hell by a devil. In the Marseillais-style decks, the card was called the House of God, and the top of the tower was shaped a bit like a crown. As tarot was adopted by the French occultists in the 18th century, Antoine Court de Gebelin stripped the card of any connection with the church. De Gebelin saw the tower as a centre for esoteric knowledge, and to gain divine wisdom required the destruction of old habits and lifestyles, so the fall of the tower became a symbol for enlightenment. A century later, Eliphas Levi returned to associations between the tower and Nimrod and Babel. He said the tower represented the height of achievement in the material world, and the falling figures had believed that they were in the possession of power, but, unable to control the laws of the universe, they were cast down in punishment for their arrogance. Swiss occultist Oswald Wirth was influenced by the work of Levi. Wirth called the car fire from heaven and claimed this referred to divine retribution, reinforced by the drops of fire that he added falling alongside the bricks to show the destruction was not random but caused by divine grace. The people were identified as a king and a false prophet, both guilty of pride, and the card represented the potential for liberation rather than catastrophe. The Arthur Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith Tarot was one of the first to use the specific imagery of lightning. They were both members of the Golden Dawn, an esoteric group founded by Samuel MacGregor Mathers, who referred to the card as the lightning-struck tower. It was now topped with a real crown, and one of the falling figures is a king who's still wearing his crown. Waite added clouds to reinforce height and retained the drops of fire. The focus had shifted from a natural disaster to an intentional lightning strike which forces change on a spiritual level. So let's take a closer look at the symbols on this card. The falling people are victims of their own desires for wealth and fame. They're guilty of various sins such as greed, pride and arrogance. The lightning is cosmic and represents the destruction of an egocentric view of consciousness. It can also symbolise those who have tried to control or dominate higher divine forces on a material level, an effort which was doomed to fail. The crown represents the heights of human ambition for power. It's separating the upper intellectual and spiritual realms from lower material focus foundations. The card now shows the sudden, violent shattering of old, rigid and false structures that have been holding back spiritual evolution and development. The falling drops of fire signify the destruction is not random or punitive, but an act of divine grace. Fire from heaven is breaking down the tower's illusion of material achievement. To focus on brickwork and height is the wrong direction. The physical can be destroyed, whereas the non-material or spiritual is eternal. The intellect can take individuals either away from or towards the truth, but the mysteries can only be understood once mistakes and errors are faced head-on. So let's take a closer look at the lessons in this card. The tower itself is a symbol of material satisfaction and fulfillment. It's a manifestation of unchecked human desire for wealth, status and fame. The more we favour surface rather than depth, the greater the risk of finding ourselves blocked from the inner self. When you can't see the light, the only way to progress is for the light to come to you. And this is what will happen if the fool doesn't heed the messages in the cards. If we ignore the signs or fail to act when we should, change will be forced upon us and be much harsher than if we'd acted sooner. The Wheel of Fortune had showed the fool how what goes up will also come down, and now he's being reminded of that lesson because he's seeing the reality of how material power, wealth and prestige can be destroyed, often unexpectedly and without warning. The failure of self-imposed greed is often inevitable. Once a fall begins, there's no stopping it, but the disaster which signals the end of plans and ambitions also brings opportunities for new beginnings. It might look like punishment, but changes are also opportunities to shift focus, and sometimes destruction is necessary to clear the way for what lies ahead. This tower is built on solid foundations. The top has exploded and people have fallen. The flames are destructive, but despite the damage, the brick structure remains mostly intact. In a tower situation, the fool may feel he's lost control. A separation or redundancy can feel devastating. There's no fear like the loss of health or the grief that comes from bereavement, but the cards have been showing the fool how to harness his inner power to manage disruption and loss. And now he's survived his darkest moment, and the knowledge will stay with him always. It's been a long and difficult journey. The next card the fool will meet is the Star. It represents the restoration of peace and calm and offers another moment of respite. So join us as we take the next step on a walk through the tarot.